Thank you for joining us here at Voluntary Virtues Hangout. This is Robert Kruger. I am your guest host, and we will be interviewing Katy Talarowski. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes,
Katy
you
Chaos?
did. You sure did.
Awesome. And Katy is more well known on the YouTube world as Katy Chaos. Her YouTube channel has garnered a good number of views for only being at it for like 3 months. Her first video came out 3 months ago, and she's almost to 10,000 views already. She wrote on her About section that she loves all things voluntary, believes that beautiful, spontaneous order can come from chaos. So I'd like to welcome Katy to the Voluntary Virtues Hangout, and of course thank all of our panel to the show. Cody, thank you. Kyron, Marky, Richard.
Hey,
So, Katy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be on the panel. Got a lot of people in there.
Yeah, it just filled up really quick. It was
Yeah.
just Marky and me for a little while there, but we can always depend on Cody and Kyron to jump on in and welcome Richard. Haven't seen you on here before, but glad to have you. So,
thanks.
so a quick question for you, Katy. One that we always typically ask for the first time that people come onto the fireside chat, so to speak. Um, is how did you come about to be an anarchist? How did your history bring you to that point? Were your parents Republican, Democrat? Were you raised in a private schools or public schools, homeschooling? What brought you to this point?
Well, pretty much, it's a lot of internet discovery. Just kind of, I don't know. I've always been very open-minded and curious. I kind of spent the majority of my high school and college life kind of apathetic towards everything, like politically related. My parents, same way, they really didn't have a whole lot to say on the matter. You know, they just kind of wanted to stay out of it. But, I mean, my story is probably similar to a lot of all of your stories with the whole Ron Paul, thing in 2012. I missed the 2008 round, but I kind of caught on 2012, got really excited. And then that led to a bunch of other really talented and intelligent YouTube personalities like Amanda Billy Rock. Love her. She was actually the first person that said the A word, and I kind of like laughed it off and didn't really think anything of it, but then she just like kept making sense, and she had a blog going on for a while. She doesn't have it anymore, but that just led to more people. Like I really enjoy Bad Quaker, his podcast, Adam Kokesh, Stefan Molyneux, love him. And a lot of, it was a snowball effect after that, just with my own questions and, everything. It all built off of each other, and it got to the point where I'm like, okay, I know all this, I get it, I'm on board, I've consumed enough, I feel like I want to create now and kind of like, package my own opinions into short little, I don't know, digestible videos, and I don't really care if people like them or not. It's just nice to have like me in one spot and expressed. So that's all there is to it.
So one of the questions that we're going to be discussing as the Hangouts continue after we're done with the interview, of course, you're welcome to stay on and continue the discussion.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be looking at the relationships, especially with parents, when it comes to becoming an anarchist, and how do you come out, or how does that relationship dynamic change? I mean, what are you supposed to do? What fears should you have? Should you stay in the closet, so to speak? So, in your own life, did you find that you were able to communicate this with your parents and friends or family, and were well received or not well received?
Well, I'm still technically partially in the closet to a lot of my coworkers and acquaintances. Like basically, pretty much a lot of people I'm friends with on Facebook, they don't know, even though I'm getting like more and more controversial with my posts. So they can kind of figure it out. I mean, they could see all my likes and groups and everything. So, but I've never officially come out. And I was thinking about making a video about that. I still might in the future and kind of make it like a big thing, but I don't know. Right now I kind of like slowly entering in the shallow end rather than diving in. But my mom, she's been really open. She's my biggest audience, my biggest fan for a while, so she's really cool with it. My dad actually died 7 years ago, and I feel like he was always very philosophical. So that's, I guess I get that from his personality. I've always been kind of the same way. Like I was into reincarnation and like reading Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance when I was like 13 years old. So I mean, it's kind of sad to think like we would have had great conversations. If he was still alive, he would definitely be on board. But I'm actually engaged, and Jason's family, they don't really know yet. They're super neoconservatives. You know, they're really into all of that. Like his dad loves, you know, the idea of the war, and I don't know. But I mean, economically, we can talk about a lot of things and have common ground. So that's good. But yeah, and a lot of my close friends, they know. But I still haven't really officially come out of the closet to my coworkers because my status job is still a public school teacher. And that would, I don't know if I even want to go there and just make it unpleasant at work, because they would all be relentless. Like they're so far indoctrinated and they're set in their ways, and I could just tell they won't be open-minded. But I don't know, I might try to venture into doing that in the future, so we'll see.
Yeah. Well, it's a tough thing, especially if you are working in a segment of the population where anarchism is really very poo-pooed by. Well, you might consider, you know, if you're going to make a video like that, consider throwing it over to Michael Shanklin. He's doing an Anarchy Rising 3 auditions, and you know, love to have your shining face on that, joining us.
Cool. Yeah, I actually already typed up the script for what I would say, and it's real, you know, short and sweet, but I just haven't recorded it yet. I've kind of just been distracted with other topics. So, yeah, that sounds great, though. You know, I would definitely be into it.
Good, good. So, you know, I found that the best possible way to actually, you know, introduce your parents or you know, step-parents or friends to the anarchist idea that you're going to become an anarchist is to introduce them to Jeffrey Tucker, but unfortunately he's kind of hard-pressed for time. But he's really a great spokesman.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if you had any questions from the audience here, let's go ahead and run by them, see if they have any other questions, because, of course, I have plenty, but I don't want to dominate the entire conversation. So, Cody, did you have any questions for our guest?
Yeah, good to meet you, Katy.
Yeah.
I was actually saying in the chat before the show that I hadn't heard of you, and I was trying to research a little bit about you, and then I realized I was already a subscriber on your YouTube channel. I just didn't realize it was you. So, anyway, great job on the videos. You're really doing well. I was curious about your teaching career. I'd like to start with just a simple question, maybe have you just tell us a little bit about your teaching, what you teach, where you teach, and your thoughts on that. And then perhaps as a follow-up, we can discuss a little bit about, I'm a homeschool and unschool advocate. We've homeschooled all 3 of my kids, and I run an unschooling page on Facebook with about 6,000 followers. And so I might follow up with your thoughts on that and kind of the direction of your future in the teaching world.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, when I started teaching, I definitely wasn't on board with all this stuff. I had no idea. I was still kind of asleep and apathetic, like I said before. But, you know, once I've woken up, it's kind of really hard to be there. Just being surrounded by people that have this deep-seated belief in the state and, you know, unions and centralized top-down education models. I mean, but you know what, I say that and they're all not happy with it, but yet I don't know, they're all still there, and I guess I am too, so I can't really I can't really say anything. But I'm kind of like, I think of myself as like an infiltrator, and I could do a lot of things in the school. Like I can have positive relationships with young teenagers, and you know, because they're all so starved for attention. Like their parents are both working, they have a lot to say, so that's a nice aspect. And I can do other math related things. Like I teach special ed math, and I, at the end of the year, taught about Bitcoin. So that was really cool to get a chance to do that. Both of the classes that I teach have no curriculum, and you can argue that Bitcoin is very much math and technology related. So I kind of slipped that in there, and I'm definitely planning other stuff like that for next year, like teaching about inflation and Austrian economics and different things like that, and kind of really stretch it. You know what I mean? It's interesting because I work at a tech school. it's kind of like a comprehensive school where they go and they get their academics and their, trade, their technical field. But we're still held to all the same rigorous academic standards with all the state testing and, the keystones. I work in Pennsylvania, and that's like our little state test that's huge here. And they still have to do all that and learn about, algebra 2. They're never going to have to add a polynomial or anything like that. So it's just frustrating because some of them are really, really good at their shop area, and they would just love to spend all day on the technical side, but we're kind of like forced to jam all this academic stuff that they might not ever use, and I don't know, that part's kind of frustrating. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question fully. I hope I got to everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And you actually kind of touched on a couple things. I was happy that you were introducing Bitcoin into your math class. I think that's fantastic. I am actually in the next couple of weeks interviewing Connor Boyack for my show on the Voluntary Virtues Network, and he has come out with children's versions, for 6 to 12-year-olds, so a little younger than your students. But it's basically a children's book version of The Law by Frederick Bastiat, and getting libertarian principles taught, philosophy taught to children, basically, and it's fantastic. I can't wait for that interview. But I was thinking of you too, as far as you have a whole different demographic, and maybe a unique opportunity to develop curriculum. But you were already touching on that, so I think that's awesome that you've already kind of thought in that vein.
Yeah. And definitely, sorry to interrupt, but I definitely, I plan on unschooling once I have my own kids, which will be in the next couple years anyway. So that's why I'm able to kind of push myself through this awful broken system, because I know, I'm doing stuff on the side. I actually have like an Agorist YouTube channel too, where I put up like math tutorial videos, because there's just so many of them now. Like education agorism is growing every day with the internet and YouTube and video tutorial sites. Like it's more than just Khan Academy now, which is great. So I'm kind of doing that on the side. Definitely going to pick that up more once I'm an unschooling parent. So that's definitely nice to kind of figure that as the finish line. Like, I just have to get through the next couple years, and then I can really do some meaningful education, and it's just awesome motivation. I'm so glad that you're unschooling too. You're definitely going to be someone that I hit up with questions in the future.
Oh, for sure. I'd love to connect. That's very cool. So how long have you been teaching?
I just got to the end of my 5th year.
Oh, wow. Great.
So I was at a charter school for 2 years, which was really different. It actually worked better than the school I'm at now. And then I've been at the public tech school for 3 years. So, yeah.
Cool. Before we go, I'm sure that Robert will mention this again later, but just before we go, make sure that you give us your link for the Agorist channel too.
Oh, yeah.
Where you said you were putting the educational videos up. I'd love to make sure people find that. So.
Definitely. I will.
Well, better tuned in with the presents. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Where would you find that?
What? Oh, it's just Katy Calculate, and then Calculate with a K, of course. So that's where you can find. And I think I linked to it in my other channel. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and check, but I'm pretty sure those two are connected.
Okay, katycalculate.com?
Yeah. It's just on YouTube.
Okay, Katy Calculate on YouTube. All right. And Richard, did you have any questions for our guest?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can.
All right. I was just curious if you see any examples. Do you see any examples of political indoctrination or the furthering of political agendas being pushed in your school? I know where I'm at in Canada, global warming and environmentalism are being pushed heavily in public schools. Do you see any examples of that or any other political agendas?
Yes, I do. I know one science teacher at my school, she still shows an inconvenient truth to all her classes, even though I'm pretty sure I've never seen the movie, but I've heard that it's been proven wrong, on multiple things that they talked about in the documentary, and she still shows it to her classes. So I hear about that, but more than just the content, it's really like the way that everybody teaches. Like, just very much not really teaching them how to think, how to ask questions, how to think critically. It's really just like a regurgitation methodology and template for everything. And even just like, I don't know, if a kid has to get up and go to the bathroom, like you have to make sure you raise your hand and ask the teacher. Like it's very demeaning the way we treat kids who are pretty much almost adults. Just the whole way that we kind of do things, and just like we can't even trust them with enough responsibility to kind of take charge of their own learning and let them be in their tech shop all day. We kind of have to, force all this other stuff down their throats too. So it's really just like the way things are done. It's not focused on critical thinking and creating, really. Like it's very passive, a lot of the content. Like definitely more reading nonfiction. They don't even read a lot of the creative works anymore, and they barely ever write, or even like digital creation. Like I wish there was just more of that, where they can just get to it, make something, communicate a message. You really don't see a lot of that, and that's what's so upsetting. And it's the saddest thing in the world, because they kind of lose their love for learning. And because of all the things that they don't want to do, they kind of carry that attitude to the things that they could be really passionate about. And they kind of just universalize education and school as this horrible thing, when really it could be a good thing. It's just, I don't know.
Oh yeah, schools are horrible for basically destroying one's desire to actually improve, and they seeing learning as a bad thing. An example of this, and it's in pop culture entertainment, but I still think it's very valid, is on The Simpsons. Bart's like talking about how he'd like to torment the teachers. He's like, sometimes I feel bad, but then I remember they're trying to make me learn, and and I think that mentality is definitely very prominent in schools, because they don't teach children. Once you beat them over the head with something, they're not wanting to learn. I was also wondering, how are you seeing the basically the institution of government represented in your school?
I don't know if I know what you mean. Can you?
Well, basically, how is it? Well, how do they teach children about? They do it from a far basically that the state is necessary, and what is the attitude about government? How is it presented? Do they do a classical liberal or libertarian perspective where, well, we need this, but government can be dangerous, or is it the be all end all and solution to all of life's problems?
Okay, yeah, I gotcha. Actually, my first year there, 3 years ago at this point, I had to do, I just did a couple observations of some of the other teachers, and I went to the social studies classroom, and just like the framing of perspectives when it comes to government is just horrible, because he was doing this little activity with his kids where he'd say a scenario and have them raise their hand if they agree, and then they'd put their hands down and he'd say, well, then you're a Republican, and then he'd say another scenario or factoid or something, and then the kids would either raise their hand or not, and he said, well, if you raise your hand, then you're a Democrat. And he just focused on those two different political aspects, but he didn't even bring up anything else. Like the libertarian option wasn't even brought up, or just like someone that doesn't believe in politics at all. It's just he focused on those two things, Republican or Democrat. You're either this or that. There is no other way of thinking. So that was really interesting to me. I'm seeing a lot of stuff with the new Common Core materials, that just the framing of stuff, it's very like the government takes care of you and you need the government. So I've seen some stuff kind of embedded in the new Common Core materials, and also just the whole like military culture of the school. Since we're a tech school, we have a bunch of kids with highly specialized skills and trades. The recruiters are at our school all the time, and they're doing activities with the gym classes where they kind of simulate a boot camp. They have giveaways at lunch, and we even have like a Veterans Day where they bring a whole bunch of veterans in and they talk to all the social studies classes, and it's just, everyone's putting them on a pedestal, and you hear all the teachers say thank you for your service, and you see all the girls fawn over them. So there's just like a very big military culture in my too, which is indoctrination, and it is
Yes.
very much government related. So yeah, that's kind of frustrating.
Do you want, like, I'm actually not that familiar with Common Core. I know it's basically really ridiculous, at least when it comes to math, or at least that's what I've seen. Do you want to elaborate on what your knowledge is of Common Core?
I could really only speak to the math, but I've seen a lot of other stuff like online and from, I mean, I think I see it more like elementary level, and not even through school, but through parents who work at my school that have kids in elementary school, and they'll come in just kind of griping about the homework and like, oh my God, I don't even know how to teach them math anymore. Or like I've seen a lot of stuff online where they like kind of embed government into the English sentences where you have to fill in the blank. There's a lot of really good examples. I think I saw a video from Corbett Report about Common Core that kind of showcases a lot of the stuff that's in there. I think it's more elementary school right now, but it's definitely creeping up. So it's just, yeah, it's kind of scary. And the whole like idea of it is that you learn this and then you take a test on it, or your work along the way in math that counts. Like you get an A for effort type of thing. Who cares if you get the wrong answer? Like if you can show the process and all the busy work steps that they make it do. Like they really make math a whole lot more complicated so that it makes the student feel like they're a hamster spinning in their wheel around and around, and they're doing all these nonsense steps, and it kind of makes them hate problem solving even more. It's kind of ridiculous, but that's really all I could say about it for now. I'll definitely update with anything new I find in the future.
All right, well, thank you very much. I don't want to monopolize. I've got a few more questions, but I'll wait for it to come around again.
All right, well then we're gonna jump on over to Kyron if he has any questions.
I do. Hello, Katy.
Hey, nice to meet you.
You too. I was curious about the proliferation of these ideas, these concepts, with your family and friends group. I know that it's our mission to spread anarchism and the philosophy of what it means to be free and how to approach it. Have you had much success in getting people in your family, your relatives, your brothers, your sisters, parents, friends to also understand this and are willing to call themselves anarchists or libertarians, etc.?
The only real, I guess you would call it, success story I've had so far is my fiance, Jason. And he was always, he has the parents that are big neocons, and he's very intelligent and open to reason and also very open-minded. So he already had kind of a grasp on the whole economics of it, and he was on board with a lot of, kind of libertarian ideologies, and just kind of learning together, and me showing him this and talking about that and asking him this. He just kind of, like, we kind of went through it together, and he's definitely calling himself an anarchist now, which is definitely funny because he doesn't look like one at all. My mom definitely, she'll never call herself an anarchist, but she's very open to anything I bring up. My friends, it's going to be a tough road ahead. They are just very embedded, and I don't know, like they like to bring up times before when I've had different ideas, and I don't know, like I think it's healthy to constantly reevaluate your belief system. It shows that you're very fluid and flexible, and you're curious, and you're willing to change and adapt and kind of learn. And so I always ask them, well, how long have you been thinking this way? Like, when's the last time you re-examined? And they're just, I feel like it's very much a cognitive dissonance thing. They're not quite ready to give up what they've believed in for so long. And I have, a bunch of people that studied political science. One of my close friends, he studied political science in college. So it's kind of like his livelihood and personality, like being a liberal. So he doesn't really want to think that the past 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 years of his life were all for nothing. So it's kind of like a pride and ego thing, but I'm definitely not willing to give up any chance I get to bring up these things and have these conversations. I'm going to take it. I don't want to be the type of person that like forces it and brings it up all the time, but if it comes up organically, I definitely, talk about it and give them solutions and answer questions and bring up questions of my own and, kind of use the Socratic dialogue or method of doing things. Like, I don't want to tell them everything. I kind of want to, like, ask them things and then have them realize that they really have no idea what they believe or see that their beliefs are inconsistent. And I feel like that's the best way. That's when you really start seeing, like, the wheels turning. I wish I could say I've converted more people to anarchism, but I really haven't at this point yet. So, but yeah.
I wanted to just mention to you, you mentioned some things about how people sort of give you these appeals to tradition and what they've always thought. There's a logical fallacy that is a logical fallacy in which, people will continue to believe in what it is that they are doing, even though they know that it may possibly be wrong, just because they've invested so much time into it. Stefan Molyneux actually talks about this this logical fallacy a lot, and I've noticed in my life too, especially with my relatives, that they really use a lot of logical fallacies in order to avoid dealing with actually having a real conversation about things. So, just a FYI, maybe if you haven't study logical fallacies as well, to be able to point out the ones that people are using just for your own self.
Is that like, are you talking about the straw man and the poisoning the well, like all those things? Yeah, I definitely want to learn more about them and be sharp with them. I kind of have a background idea, but yeah, I think it's just easier for people to kind of sit back and watch TV and go with the flow. I mean, having opinions and defending opinions is hard work. It's a lot of time and research, and if people aren't passionate about it, it's just easier to kind of go with the popular box that everybody's fitting into and just, okay, my team thinks this, so that means that I think that. That was easy. And it's just they're not ready to kind of confront any kind of logical fallacy or inconsistency, which is a shame. But I'm hoping all these kids that are being raised under unschooling will ruffle some feathers. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Katy, have you encountered any resistance as far as, I know that you said you're somewhat in the closet as far as your friends go, but I know that as I refined my philosophical thinking in these regards, that I found some people to be intolerable to be around. And I don't mean that to sound like this big judgmental figurehead like situation, but sometimes people's philosophy really comes out in their day-to-day life, and you can see it, and it gets so repulsive that you can't stand to be around it. I, for instance, had a couple of clients and friends who were extremely progressive, liberal Democrat type people, and it was never really a problem for me to be friends with them until I really started to refine my philosophy, and I found that sometimes their daily actions were just repulsive to me, the things that would kind of come out of their mouths and the things that they would champion. And so I was wondering if you had met with any of that type of resistance, your own resistance to, and maybe having to sever friendships or relationships or anything, because it's a topic I'm really curious about as far as the libertarian the world, and I've seen a lot of debate of what's right and what's wrong and what we ought to be doing in that regard.
Right, and actually this is very recent because I listened to Molyneux's latest podcast where he answers a bunch of questions from the mailbag, and he flat out said in it, I do not hang out with status. And I'm kind of different in that sense because and actually, this reminds me of another recent social media post. Have you guys chatted with Marcel Fontaine yet? He has a show on voluntary virtues. He's really funny. I met him at Liberty Fest actually, and he posted that he will be friends with status, and that's fine. Like, he accepts everybody, and he doesn't really want to cut anyone off, and I'm kind of more in line with that. I'm kind of sympathetic to a lot of people so far. I mean, I haven't yet met anyone yet that's completely, that, you know, I can't be around. But I got to think about, these people all went through 12 years of, you know, indoctrination. It's going to take a long time and a lot of repetition, and hearing, you know, this philosophy applied to different aspects of life for them to come around and maybe, you know, kind of open the door to these ideas. So I'm very, what's the word, adamant. Like, I'm not willing to give up on a lot of people just yet. So I actually haven't met anyone that I'm willing to close the door on. But you know, who knows? I might meet people like that. The more and more I come out, you know, people might start to throw their, or, you know, show their true colors, and in that case, I might just have to cut ties. But I don't really see that happening just with my personality. But at the same time, I can understand Molyneux saying his thing. You know, different things for different people. That's just my preference. I'm keeping the door open for now. So,
well,
realistically,
realistically, if we're not actually being a part of the community that we're trying to change, then how can we change it?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yep.
You know,
yeah, that's why I'm hoping over the summer I just kind of make the big leap and come out to everybody. I'm really hoping I work up the courage. I know I really have a lot of work to do, self-knowledge, and kind of learning how to unlearn fear, because fear is, you know, or just unwillingness to deal with a bunch of people's, you know, mockery or comments. Or I'm not really afraid of the questions, because I feel like I'm getting a lot of practice with them, and I'm very, you know, firm in my beliefs, and I can answer them just fine. But I just don't know if I'm willing to put up with, like, the constant, you know, jabs or comments, or, you know. But I'm hoping this summer I can come out to everybody, and then I have a pretty big Facebook friends list. That's a lot of people that I could potentially introduce new ideas to, so that's very tempting. I just have to kind of continue to work on unlearning fear, which, yeah. I know.
You know, there's a scene in Apocalypto, and the father is talking to his son about fear, and, you know, you should definitely try to get this link, and it's a very powerful scene in which he's saying, don't let it ever enter you, because it's a disease, and it will consume you, and you don't need to have it. And I also found what the logical fallacy was that you said about your friend who is a political scientist, in quotations, of course. And it's called sunk cost fallacy. So just FYI for when you want to throw that out. And then, you know, with what I've come to understand, and the easiest way to tell people about what anarchism is, or what you're saying whenever you say anything in regards to anarchism, is that I only want all human interactions to be voluntary.
Yeah.
If you're disagreeing with me then that all human interactions shouldn't be voluntary. And if you just keep bringing it back to that, then they really have no argument.
Right. Yeah, no, that's good. I like that. I'm definitely, I don't know, at some cost, that's an economic term, right? Like, you kind of miss out on opportunities the longer you spend doing something else. Yeah,
Right.
I think about that a lot. Like, I'm missing out on a lot of opportunities, and there's a lot of sunk costs, so hopefully I can come around and really start using actions, because I definitely have a lot of words, and I definitely have a specific audience, but I definitely want to expand that and really live anarchy instead of just speak it. But I'm working on it.
Well, as long as you make sure that all your interactions that you have with people are voluntary, then you're an anarchist, you know, and you're doing it.
Yep. All right.
So one of the questions that Mike likes to ask a lot, and I think is a good question, is whether you come from a perspective that says, all right, the results and the economic results, or the moralistic results that you're going to get from an anarchistic society is the way that you like to really bring people in, or do you tend to prefer to go with a initial premise-based approach that says, all right, these particular acts are, like you can have trade that is voluntary or trade that is involuntary, where there is coercion. Or you can have relationships that are voluntary or relationships that are coercive. So you start from an a priori kind of baseline and then build into it. So which way do you tend to find your dialogue goes when you're talking with other people?
So the latter thing you said is you start with a baseline where you kind of have like your cell and then go from there.
Yeah, you start with axiomatic statements and then build. And the other one is basically you start with, well, if we want to have a peaceful society, if we want to have a productive society, then we have to eliminate these things that are destructive to it. And so you work kind of backwards from what the results are to get to a position that is anarchist.
Yeah, I think definitely the later or the latter. Because I feel like the eliminating things, that's kind of focusing on like issues in isolation, and it's kind of more negative, like eliminating things, taking things away. Whereas I like to try to focus on solutions and agorism and alternatives. And here's if you just live your life by these set principles, that kind of is like the umbrella that covers everything else. Like don't hurt others, non-aggression principle, self-ownership, private property, and kind of just like apply that broad, big picture idea to everything else. And I just feel like it's a lot easier to talk about it from that angle or perspective, if that makes sense. Did that answer your question, I hope?
You're axiomatic, not consequentialist. Okay. So Kenji on the chat wanted to point out that there was a little disconnect there between two different things. One we have opportunity cost, and the other is sunk cost. And sunk cost is more about I don't know. Let's say you're playing poker and you put $50 into a pot trying to win it, and you got one last bet that's $120. Well, you feel like, well, I've already put $50 in here. Let's go ahead and go for it.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Whereas you're not actually evaluating the particular decision in that moment in time based upon whether it's a good decision or not. You've spent all this time putting efforts in, so you're kind of committed, so screw it, I'm just going to go ahead and stay where I'm at. That's the sunk cost fallacy, where you just keep doing what you're doing because it's what you've already put so much effort into.
Right.
All right, well, it looks like we have another person joining us here at the Roundtable, and so Nico, welcome to the group. If you could unmute yourself, if you have any questions for our guest, Katy Khaos, please shoot.
I came in because I heard that any voluntary virtue host could come in, and I'm not too familiar with this particular person, but she's been getting very popular recently, hasn't she?
I'd say so. A 3-month period and almost 10,000 views on all of her videos. I've been doing it for years, and I don't think I have that many.
Yeah, I haven't seen a single one of her videos yet, so I guess my question would be, are you really humble about talking to other people about it? I mean, what exactly how do you get that successful appeal?
On the internet, I feel like that's a lot different than like people in my real life. It's really easy to get on. Like, I don't know, I get on Reddit a lot, and I kind of, I'm a part of the community there, so that's easy to kind of talk to those people. But they exist everywhere. They exist all over the world. They're just kind of like my digital e-friends, and I have a lot of them. But in real life, it's just kind of harder to I don't know, think of the idea of coming out as an anarchist to my coworkers. So I haven't really, I am humble or shy or modest or whatever the word is, kind of like just unwilling as of right now. But on the internet, shit, I'll do whatever. I'll make friends with everybody. I'll spread the word. I'll kind of like try to market myself a little bit. So I guess they're two totally different worlds for me. But yeah.
So
I don't know.
networking.
But I have another video coming out soon. I actually collaborated. It's led to like real life friends too, because someone found one of my videos and he said, "Oh, I live, here," and it ended up being 10 minutes away. So I collaborated with him on a video that's going to be coming out within the next couple days. And that's just really cool. Like the internet and YouTube has led to an actual real life friend that I could do projects with, and he actually has his own blog, that's getting going. So that's just really cool how the two worlds kind of connected because of YouTube, and now we can, two minds are always better than one. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm hoping that it leads to more things in the future. So.
What is this upcoming video that you're talking about going to be about?
Okay, well, so for 4th of July, we made. Remember back 2 years ago? I guess it was like 2012. All the like shit people say videos were big, like shit girls say, shit guys say, shit, and it went crazy from there. Shit Apple fanatics say, and it got like really specific for some of them. I'm drawing a blank on all of them, but there's tons. So we made a video that's going to be called Shit Patriotic Americans Say. And so we kind of play on a lot of the things that, we hear from people that are really like, rah, rah, USA. But then at the end, we slip in some philosophy where we talk about, how being an American is really just a geographic coincidence and not a personal accomplishment, and how, borders are just imaginary lines. They really just separate us when really, we're all about peace and cooperation. So we kind of, sneak in some philosophy at the end. I'm excited for that one to come out.
Sounds like some good stuff. Well, we did have an agreement with you, 45 minutes. If you wanted to stay on longer, though, and I understand that Cody and Richard both had some additional questions. They kind of held off and let some other people talk. So, if you'd like to stay on and answer more questions, that's great. But if you do have to go, we understand.
Okay, I can stay on. Yeah.
Oh, great. Great. Well,
right.
Cody, go ahead and.
I actually wanted to say a quick thing instead of shit. Patriotic Americans say.
Yeah.
I would just title it "Americans Be Like." It's not about the shit people say no more. It's be like.
Oh, the
Americans
2014
be like.
version. I like it.
Americans be like.
I like it. All right. Yeah.
All right, Cody, you had a question there?
Yeah, and I don't know, if you want to decline any of these questions, of course you have the right to. I don't know how personal you want to get on this, but you were talking about your fiance and how he's come around to anarchism.
Yeah.
And I know for me personally, it's become important to be an advocate for anarchism, and obviously you are with your YouTube channels and all this. So I'm just curious how that has, if he is involved in any of your efforts, if he is interested in getting more involved in the community or any advocacy or anything like that.
He's definitely a lot more reserved than I am with all this stuff. So you won't ever see him on the internet making a video or writing an article or anything like that, but it is cool. Like, he'll come out to events with me. Like, I haven't really been to many at all. I'm missing Pork Fest, so I'm kind of sad about that, but he'll come out to whatever's going on in the vicinity. Like, we're gonna go to the Peace Rally down in DC, I think. It says there's only 200-something people going now, so we'll still go probably. But we went to Liberty Fest and a bunch of other like meetups, like the Bitcoin meetup in Philly. That we go to that a lot. So he's definitely all about the community aspect, and also he's very intelligent with the whole like money, economics, inner workings. If I ever have a question, that I'm going to use for one of my videos or just anything, I go to him, and he has a way of explaining it that's really, it works for how I learn. So, he's kind of like behind the scenes, but he definitely, enjoys meeting people and going to things and answering my questions. And so it's good to definitely work with him, but he's not really as outgoing as I am, especially on the internet. So, but yeah, that's that. I think it works for him.
That's very cool. And you said that he pretty much came to anarchism, or maybe you both did, after you had already met?
Yeah, after we kind of went through everything together, I would just find more stuff and more more books and more videos and more people, and I'd get so excited and share it with him, and since he's so open to reason and he's very intelligent, it was an easy transition for him too. We kind of just went down the river together. So
That's cool. That's cool. The reason I ask is I think that having anarchist families, is an important aspect to our future as a free society, because I feel anyway that a lot of anarchists are either very, very young, maybe the wrong Paul exposure or whatever, and so they're all single, or they're like me, who kind of came to anarchism later in life, and there's this like disconnect with all my family, and philosophy's changed a lot since I had kids and was married for 20 years and all this. So
right.
I kind of see both ends of the spectrum. So it's refreshing to see a couple starting a family together as anarchists. Anyway,
Yeah.
It's awesome. So that's why I wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, definitely excited to do like all the peaceful parenting too, and practice negotiating and all those skills. Yeah, but Meetup is great for that. Like, I don't have a lot of my actual real life friends that I grew up with or met wherever along the way before I came to this philosophy, but through Meetup and different Bitcoin events and stuff like that, we've met people locally and they're real life friends. Like I said before, the guy that commented on the video, the Bitcoin meetups and stuff like that, they've led to real life friendships, and I love that. The internet connects people in unimaginable ways, and it really just closes the gap and brings like-minded people together. So I love that.
Very cool. Very cool. Richard, you said you had other questions. Did you want to jump in on this?
Well, yeah, this is for anyone. This isn't specifically just for her, but I just made me think of because you said you had a agorism channel where you just focused on agorism.
Math, like education agorism. I use the Show Me app. Are you guys familiar with that? You can go on and really you don't have to you can do any topic. It's free. You download it on your iPad and you kind of like just record videos and draw stuff out. And you can download those videos and put them on YouTube. So it's really a great teaching template that you can use or just tool. And I've been using that and putting it on my Katy Calculate channel. So it's agorist, but it's specifically like education agorism, math type stuff. But Show Me is definitely a great app. You guys should definitely all check it out, especially if you something specific you want to teach that you kind of have to use a lot of visuals and colors and stuff like that. It's great. I highly recommend it.
Well, my question was, are you thinking that agorism is a solution to statism? And I'm also want to talk about this in relationship to what I consider a coming economic collapse, at least within the Western world, because I think the U.S. dollar is not sustainable for as a currency because it's been inflated to hell, and it's eventually, mathematically speaking, I think it's going to have to either collapse or be replaced by something else. And I find a lot of libertarians, ANCAPs, whatever term you use to describe yourself, seem to think that agorism is going to be the way we escape statism, but I'm a little bit of a contrarian here because I don't know if that's true or not, because once the state collapses, the people who are still statists are still going to look for state solutions. Now, an example I'm using of this is recently a lot of people in Detroit are finding that they can't pay their water bills, and actually activists are trying to get the United Nations to step in and pay their water bills. And I think that once the welfare state collapses, you're going to have this appeal to another whoever the state is, probably will be the United Nations, to step in and fill the void. So I think agorism is good for maybe select communities, having people who are isolated to kind of to be self-sufficient, but I think at the same time you are going to have these masses of humanity that are going to scramble for some sort of state to rescue them, and I think that is most likely going to be the United Nations or some global governing body. Now, I would like to hear your thoughts about that and anyone else.
Yeah, actually, I was talking with Jeff Berwick. I was on his anarchist show a couple weeks ago, and that was kind of my last like punch that I said like on his show. I'm with the government school, and I don't know. I do what I can, to infiltrate or whatever. But I feel like it is going to lead to an economic collapse, and that me working in like a government position, that's definitely going to help bring it to its inevitable state of destruction. And I feel like the only way it can work is if it's a gradual transition. So like, yeah, the state fails in this area and then that area, and then there just needs to be a bunch of people that are willing to fill that need and are already practicing doing so while the government's still kind of functioning, so that when it does collapse, someone can swoop in and really just market the product or service, or have a lot of people working together and really just do it better. I'm sure there will be a need for the type of government services in that same format. And you know what the thing about anarchy is, if they want like this community that they can get together and just throw in a certain amount of money each month and like just have everything taken care of, they're free to do that. I just want no part of it. So I don't know, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of different agorist areas that pop up, and they just need to be ready to swoop in with better ideas, products, and services. And I hope that that can happen gradually, and this transition is nice, but I really don't know. I have no idea if it's going to be a messy revolution type transition, or if it's just going to be like one section at a time, the market replaces the government or the state. And I hope
the state.
Richard, let's have the open-ended question, answered by the whole group, and then we can go on from there. Yeah. So, Kyron or Cody, who's next?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on his question actually, because for me, I see one of the many goals that we may have as anarchists is not necessarily to bring down the state, but to live regardless of the state. And that's kind of the theme of my show and my channel, is to try to get people to live their lives. Like, there's this terrible thing called the government, and yeah, we can philosophize about it and everything, but bringing it down is not necessarily the goal. You need to live as free as you can now. And I tend to view agorism in that regard. If you can avoid paying excessive taxes, of course I'm not saying do anything illegal, that's your call or whatever, but if you're going to practice agorism, I think that's just one more notch of freedom that you can create in your life to live outside of the state in your own life. So that's kind of my own personal view of agorism. Not that it's really going to achieve any end goal as a society. It may, but that's not the primary goal to me. It's the individual. So just my 2 cents.
And of course, I'm sure, Kyron, you've got a lot to say about this one, huh?
Well, I really don't think that it's going to be a single silver bullet as what will sort of cause, the government to, disappear. I think it's going to be a multiplicity. It's going to be a death by 1,000 cuts. It's going to be agorism. It's going to be. Go ahead, Katy.
No, that reminds me of Ben Stone. Do you listen to him at all? Like laying the Legos out in the middle of the night?
Is Ben Stone the angry Quaker? Yeah.
He has a podcast called Ben Quaker. But he does this series called Beyond Civil Disobedience, and he talks about like the death by 1,000 paper cuts and like laying the Legos out in the middle of the night and stuff like that. That just reminded me. Sorry. Go ahead.
That's all right. So it's cannibalizing itself. I can't government and government employees and government workers as cannibals who are, devouring us all, but mistakenly taking bites out of themselves, because they can't differentiate, the human flesh that they're eating. And so it's cannibalizing itself. People are sort of waking up more and more. All the government money that they invested into entities like Facebook and Twitter are actually, instead of just monitoring what people are doing and what people are thinking, it's actually helping to spread these ideas and these philosophies. And so, agorism will just be merely, one of the major cuts or stabs that finally takes the behemoth down. There's also Bitcoin. There's also Litecoin. There's also, people
Dogecoin.
building. Right, Ripple. I haven't really checked into Ripple a whole lot, but people are gonna go off in the woods and start building their own communities. Not that they want to live in the woods particularly, but it's the way that you can build a community quickly and not have a lot of government oversight into what it is that you're doing, and start generating their own electricity and growing their own food, and showing people that, hey, you don't have to be beholden to paying all of these taxes in order to live a life that resembles that which human beings live. And so, for me, it's about exactly what you said, Cody, and that's it's living it, and just acting as if the government already doesn't exist.
Okay, and I like the final word on this, and then obviously, Richard, if we haven't addressed your question fully, just go ahead and jump back on. The way I look at it is this: is that we have to change minds, and trying to persuade someone through an analytical, logical approach of how it is that the world will be better off without government is a very tedious and time-consuming process. It doesn't really work very well. There are people who have cognitive dissonance that will just not listen. And what does work really well, though, is if you provide them a product or service in a way that is superior to what they're getting from the government. And when people start to see that the currency of the United States dollar is not actually buying them what they want in retaining value when they store it, then they're going to switch to alternatives which are being provided by the free market, like Bitcoin, Litecoin, and so on. The same thing is true, I believe, with the movement for the Peacekeepers app that is being designed for providing assistance when people are in their homes and they have a fire or they have some sort of a criminal action upon them, where somebody's trying to steal them away or something like that, an abduction, where it contacts the people who are in their local community adjacent to where they live so that they can respond immediately. By providing these alternatives to wow, you get to wait 12 minutes for the police to arrive when you need help now, they're going to see, hey, it's so much better. I actually get a response. Teaching people how to actually use fire hydrants and hoses in your neighborhood instead of being reliant upon a fire department that might be 20 miles away. So by creating all these different alternatives, we will change their mindset in what it is that they believe. I myself am really trying to make this project work, where I'm trying to create basically almost like a push button type of thing, where you fill out a form, you fill out some paperwork, and now you're your own corporation, your own business, and all of your income that your business that your employer would have paid to you is now going into the business. They no longer are paying Social Security. They're no longer paying their part of Social Security. You're not paying for welfare, for unemployment insurance, and all those costs are dropped. And so the employer has a net reduction in their costs, and you kind of split the difference with them, so that you're getting paid more, and it would automatically create your own self-directed IRA or self-directed investments in storing money for your own in case you have a problem with unemployment. You're protecting yourself there. And if we create a situation where people can just instantly become a self-owned corporation and they're not paying all these taxes into the bullshit that government is, instead they're actually getting all those things that they're expecting government to do, but from the free market, where it'll be done better, that in itself will change minds so drastically, and we will see a spread of that particular philosophy that, hey, I've got it all, I don't need to worry about a safety net from the government because I've already got a safety net that I pay for. So changing minds through an agorism thing, to me, is where the death of the state actually comes. Did that answer your question, Richard?
Well, that's pretty much. I think what you've said really does strike a nerve, because you do have to. I think providing value to people will intrinsically kind of move them in our direction, right? People like they care about where their food comes from, who provides services, right? I think that's the big deal. My concern is that as the nation states fail, you're just going to have power move up to a kind of a global level of governance, and it's already happening now, but like through various treaties and such. So I guess that's my concern is again the construction of what I consider a global state. So yeah, that's just basically it.
Well, it becomes less and less efficient the more distant it becomes from the people that it's working with. So obviously you're going to see an attempt by people to do that, but I just don't see that it will have any long-term viability, because if you actually do compare their service to the free market solution, people's minds will be made up. I mean, people right now in this state of New Mexico, they by and large go to the private sector MVD department solutions instead of the public sector one. You know, people are willing to pay for their time in saving their time on that type of thing. So every time that I've seen a competition between a government provided solution and a private provided solution, the one that's always the most efficient is the private provided solution.
No, I definitely have to agree with you, and I think that even if, you know, say the United Nations or whoever else, NATO or whatever, was rolling down our streets, that would actually have a lot less legitimacy than the nation states that we have now, so people would be more willing to kind of push back against it. I guess my only concern is you've got these people who are so hardwired into statism, they think that any sort of private enterprise is evil, and corporations, and you're doing this for profit. Oh no, you're the devil. That's bad. You shouldn't do things for profit, you know. And they're just so economically illiterate. I just wonder, like, we might have to create like a Liberty City and just kind of batten out the hatches and lock these people out. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Nico also had a question that was open-ended for the group, so I was going to go ahead and shoot that over to Nico. What was that question?
Okay, so the state is successful because it need not rely upon the activist, but the masses whose children embody the pinnacle of indifference. Everything I've learned about anarchism, I've learned from the internet, and it's not the products of anarchism, but thought processes and lines of questioning. It seems to me that successful movements generally have leaders, and they're known outside of their small circles, and it seems to me like anarchists aren't really well known. You take people like Larkin Rose or Stefan Molyneux, they're very obscure. People don't know who the hell these people are because only their circle knows who they are. So my question is, who is the Malcolm X? How do we get our Malcolm X? Where do you make that jump? How is that possible?
Well, obviously, we've got a wide panel of opinions, and let's just go ahead and jump to our guest, Katy Khaos, and see what she has to say.
I think that there's so many leaders, you know, and it depends on what you're interested in. Like Molyneux, obviously, he's focused on, you know, children's rights and peaceful parenting, but then we got, you know, Larkin Rose, his big thing is the defensive force. Like, I think there's so many leaders in so many different topics. I don't know if we need to have like one big papa, but if I don't know, if I had to pick one just for fun, I would think that it would be Molyneux. I mean, his subscription base is growing. His audience is definitely engaged. But I don't think that we necessarily need one, or, you know, maybe we need a bunch, and we have that already. Yeah, I mean, that's really all I have.
Okay, and joining us, we have Daniel Rothschild. Daniel, what would you say?
What was the question?
Who is it that's going to become the Malcolm X of the movement? Who's going to bring all of our...
Well, considering Malcolm X got shot, I hope no one. I mean, I don't know. I don't think we should really have a leader. Even movements that are designed to be. I mean, look at objectivism. Ayn Rand preached individualism and freedom, and it became very cult-like. I don't really think there should be a leader. I think philosophies that make sense, views you hear that make sense, you adapt. I mean, I don't think there's anyone who is right about everything. I think Stefan Molyneux, I'll use him as a good example, says a lot of smart things, and he says other things which are complete and utter nonsense.
Yeah, but I mean, you take for example what you just said, Ayn Rand. I mean, yeah, there's not really much of a leader for the objectivism. I mean, there's an objectivist political party, but if you talk about objectivism, no one's going to know what the hell you're talking about, or at least most people aren't going to know what you're talking about. If you say something like, I don't know, Gandhi or Martin Luther King, people know those people. People have an idea of what those people are preaching.
People do know Ayn Rand. I mean, quite frankly, Ayn Rand's book, The Atlas Shrugged, was considered to be the second most influential book by Americans, second only to the Bible.
Mm-hmm. There's more truth in there, though. But yeah.
In all likelihood, there's more truth in the Atlas Shrugged, you were saying, right?
There's more truth in the acknowledgments than in the Bible. So.
Yeah. All right, and so then, as far as your opinion on the idea that do we need a leader, or who is the next leader type?
Do we need a leader in an anarchy movement? Come on. No, it's all about freedom. That's the whole point. There is no leader.
But you've had your point, man. Let somebody else go. All right, Cody.
Yeah, I don't want to derail this conversation on a tangent, so I'm just going to use this as an example. I own a CrossFit gym, and part of the methodology of CrossFit is to try to find, like the CrossFit Games. I'm sure some of you have seen it on ESPN and all this stuff, and whether you like it or not, that's the part I want to leave out. But the goal in the CrossFit Games is to try to find the fittest person on earth. And it just so happens that I actually came to libertarianism through CrossFit, believe it or not, because the founder of CrossFit is a libertarian, and so he would post Ayn Rand articles and things like this on his fitness website. Well, he has a very libertarian philosophy for trying to find the fittest person in the world, and that is to throw as wide a net as possible, to be non-exclusive. So there are no territories for CrossFit gyms. It's not a franchise. He doesn't control anything, and you can set up two CrossFit gyms next door to each other. There's no territories, so it's a complete and free, like a free and open market for the fitness philosophy of CrossFit. So I think I guess I just say all that to get to the wide net philosophy. If you want to establish a movement and find somebody who's perhaps charismatic enough or whatever to bring in mainstream attention, then the goal should be just to cast as wide a net as possible, and that's really the solution, to find somebody who's going to be able to go mainstream. So far, any attempts at going mainstream has ended up being the conspiracy theorists, and I'll leave names out of it, but you know who I'm talking about. People who have network TVs, they're either still statist or really way out there off the deep end. So now whether we need that person or not is a whole separate question, and I think that's what Daniel is trying to get at. But whether we find that person or not is it's just a matter of casting that wide net. So I think with things like the Voluntary Virtues Network and trying, we have over. Is it 200 hosts now? Something like that? 200? Am I mistaken on that? Or maybe 200 different time slots at least, with shows airing. We're starting to cast that wide net and get a bigger voice there. So, maybe it's just a matter of time before somebody can step up and actually enter that mainstream thought in America.
Okay, I've got a quick comment from the YouTube channel, the YouTube cast. And then we'll go to Kyron's opinion on this. Dick Rode says, the guy asking the question is off. Is there a leader in the market? No, just innovators. Kyron?
Yeah, hate to be Captain Obvious here, but you know, asking for a leader of an anarchist movement is kind of oxymoronic. Um, but you know, there's going to be people who stand out more than others, of course, and it's good that you know, shit. I mean, talk about exponential growth. The fucking amount of videos online about anarchism is about to J curve through the roof. I mean, there wasn't there wasn't any people of color talking about anarchism as far as I could see. And now that I can name at least four who have videos on, you know, voluntary virtues, and there's this guy, that guy T, and his shit is awesome. And it's just, you know, there's this exponential growth that's actually happening that I don't think people are really acknowledging. And yeah, you know, fuck a leader. Who knows? As you said, Cody, there might be the person who makes the best videos and is able to spread anarchism the furthest and the quickest, uh, still out there waiting. And they may not watch, you know, my video. They may not watch, motherfucker. They may not watch a Stefan Molyneux video, but they might watch a Katy Chaos video, and that's what turns them out, and they'll be the Neo of of anarchism, and everybody will become anarchists and will live happily ever after in our earthships or condos or wherever the hell you want to live, because it's anarchism. You do what the hell you want to do. So yeah, leader, what leader? We all wipe our ass the same way, hopefully.
It's kind of cool. Like, there's different experts and people that specialize in different areas. Like, there's people that know Bitcoin and crypto anarchy in and out and can answer any questions and can really educate other people. But then, you know, there's other people who are great at talking to people on the street and doing the whole independent journalism stuff. There's some people out there that are maybe really good at researching and digging through a pile of shit on the internet and figuring out what's true and what's not. Like, it's kind of like the division of labor. Like, there's authorities or leaders or experts in all different areas that we're all interested in, and I think that's really cool. That's, you know.
All right. You know, I'm actually going to agree with Katie here. I think there will be special. I think there are leaders. I don't think we're going to need one Superman. You know, if you want to answer who's doing the best job being mainstream right now, who's, you know, principled anarcho-capitalist, I would say Molyneux, because he was able to get on Joe Rogan. But, you know, I think it's going to entail all of us who handling certain issues that we find interesting, but doing it from an anarcho-capitalist libertarian perspective. For instance, I handle Agenda 21 in the implementation arm of it, and I make the arguments from a principled libertarian property rights perspective, while, you know, there's another guy here up in Canada, Tim Moen. He is the leader of the Libertarian Party in Canada, but I know he's a anarcho-capitalist, so he makes his arguments from a principled anarcho-capitalist point of view. I think it's going to take an army of leaders who kind of infiltrate mainstream issues, but handle them from a principled libertarian anarcho-capitalist perspective, and that is how we'll kind of spread the message. Not, you know, no one's going to save us. We're not going to have a leader come in and usher us to the promised land of liberty. No, we all have to be leaders in our own lives, in our own respect. You know, like I said, I handle a certain issue. This is probably what my most knowledgeable issue is, but other people handle cryptocurrencies, other people handle other issues, you know, the financial system, you know what I mean? There's not going to be one person to lead us home, but an army of leaders who will kind of create more leaders, and that is how I think we will kind of spread the message of liberty, kind of decentralized and organically, not some messiah to take us home.
Hey, I know that you really are just chomping at the bit there, Daniel.
Yes.
But we do kind of need to move on to another topic here, so make it quick, brief comment. I'll make a quick comment, and then we'll go back to Richard if we and to Nico if we've
Cody
answered the question.
said that he wants to cast a large net, and I think it depends what you mean. If you mean how do we make our message more mainstream, then well, I'm a bit of a purist. I don't want people to enter the movement who don't really have the philosophy and then taint it and ruin it. And the Tea Party was never a Republican movement. Occupy Wall Street was never a Democratic movement, and it became that. These movements also tend to. So I think if we cast a large net in terms of how do we just appeal to people instead of just saying the truth, I'm not really for that. But in terms of, well, what's the best way to deliver our message, I am a libertarian slut. I think you should do everything and see what works. Hopefully the only thing you'll be spreading is liberty.
Yeah,
So-
casting a wide net and diluting the message are two different things. So I think you and I are on the same page.
So I would add one last thing to the question for you here, certainly if you feel that you've gotten a level of response that you were hoping for, Nico, just let us know. When it comes to anarcho-capitalism, one of the things that we understand through looking at Austrian economics and how the supply and demand of things change and how it works, what you'll see is that you have a certain amount of vertical height that you can achieve within a market system, and in the culture that we have, there are so many diverse ideas, so many diverse interests, so many diverse subject matters, and even though there is kind of a mainstream, there's still so many different things that people are interested in that they'll pay attention to. And so when you try to have a person become like this exemplar who's going to reach all these different diverse interests, they're only going to be able to achieve a certain level of success. And just like you will see in a free market where you won't have businesses that become just these megaliths like Walmart, you won't see the same kind of thing happen when you have the same type of principles that we have in the anarchist movement, is that there won't be a person who can really become this leader, savior, whatever, that goes out there and becomes super powerful in any particular way. It'll be people who have strong followerships in, let's say, I don't know, maybe in the feminist movement, we might have Kathy Riesenwitz become a big name person in that group. Or when it comes to journalistic integrity and so on, we might find that the Reason magazine becomes a more followed group. You'll see that people who are dealing with parenting, maybe it's going to be Molyneux. Maybe if they're dealing with being loud protesters and in getting out there, it's going to be Adam Kokesh. There's going to be a large, huge variety of different people, and I'm hoping at some point maybe we can get Kane to do a remake of They Live, so maybe that could be like a sounding board. Who knows? We've got all sorts of different people who are providing alternatives for the mainstream media in particular realms that have growing viewership and people who are listening to the message. So, Nico, what do you think?
I see what you're saying, but I think it might be impossible, even if the possibility of there being a single leader, or at the very least a very popular icon, might be impossible. And when I say this, I would like to compare it to music. The internet is wonderful because it allows us to share and connect and network with people, and we can share these ideas in different forms of media. But what that also allows is for people to become so caught up in their very niche things. Like, there was never going to be another, or there probably isn't going to be another really big rock band. There's probably not going to be another U2. There's probably not going to be another Beatles, because everything just seems to be so obscure now. People don't have to
watch the 13 channels that you were forced to watch when you were a kid, because now you can pretty much watch whatever you want. If you like anime, you can watch anime all day, every day, and then that's all there is for you. So I think it might be impossible for there to be a leader, but
yeah, well, that's kind of a good thing in my opinion. So moving on to additional topics, you know, we've been here dealing with Katy Khaos, and you know, I'd like to just go ahead and ask her if there's any particular topics that she had on her mind. I know that just recently you shared a information about Kristen Megan as a whistleblower. That story I'm not particularly familiar with. Could you tell us about it? Got to unmute.
Sorry. Yeah, I just came across her because I posted something on my Facebook kind of as a joke about chemtrails. I said something like, chemtrails, chemclouds, oh my god, ha 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 ha. And, you know, one of my status friends, he's like, oh, that looks like a contrail. What's a chemtrail? And so it just led me to, like, you know, look up people, videos, research, and I came across her. She worked for the military in the Air Force, and she, you know, was kind of like the OSHA person. Like, she had to do a whole lot of, like, air and land samples to make sure everything that they were using was safe, and you know, there weren't any chemicals in it and things like that. And you know, she had to she had to account for everything. She had to find out what were these things, and she found these tanks to be loaded on the planes, and she started asking questions like, what are these? Like, why are we using these? I need to know. Like, we need to account for this stuff. I need to make sure it's safe and there's no chemicals in it and blah, blah, blah. And then she actually received threats, you know, like serious physical threats to her family, like, and you know, not even just losing her job, like very serious. But then I think she started working in another area where she had to kind of work more with testing the land and the air samples, and they correlated with what the tanks were labeled with. Like, the tanks were labeled with like aluminum and barium and strontium, and they were higher than average aluminum and all those other heavy metals in the rain samples, the snow, the air, the soil, and things like that. So I don't know, just listening to her talk about it is really interesting. I have a soft spot for whistleblowers. I figure, why would these people risk their jobs to go out on a limb and speak out about this? She doesn't pretend to know why they're spraying us with these chemicals and metals. You know what I mean? Like, she doesn't make any conclusions, which I kind of like, but she knows that, you know, there's definitely something fishy going on up there. You know, and you could see it, like the chemtrails in the sky. It just makes me wonder. So I don't know. I don't want to turn into Katy conspiracy, but it has piqued my interest lately. I don't know what you guys think about that topic. Maybe I know it's very controversial. So,
oh,
but,
yes.
Yeah.
It's definitely a controversial. Is anyone else here familiar with Kristen Megan's work at all?
Yeah, I've seen some of her interviews and speeches.
And what would you say about it?
Well, you know, she comes from a definitely an inquisitive perspective. She was an Army insider. It was her job to categorize all these chemicals, and they couldn't give her a straight answer about where they came from and why they were kind of there and what they were doing with them. So, you know, I think her work is very important, and I definitely take it into account, that the idea of chemtrails. I think, you know, I don't know. There have been people who've tested the precipitation, and they've found traces of strontium, aluminum, barium. So, you know, I've yet to been able to kind of connect with her for an interview, but I definitely would be interested in a deeper kind of examination of her work.
Where I stand on the whole chemtrail thing is kind of where I stand on a whole lot of other conspiracy theory, global warming type things. Look, if you want to know what is really going on as far as the government and slash corporations, the government is a corporation, and corporations are essentially parts of the government, or they form like Voltron, basically. So when I think of those this entity, this body, there's a whole lot of things that they've already done that we know are absolute fact that we don't even have to question uh, as to what it is that they've done. So I think it sort of muddies the waters by bringing up these things that have not yet been proven, or are still sort of conspiracy. It's good to
See,
sort
I
of
could not disagree with you more. I actually could not possibly disagree with you more.
hold on. But to the point of
No, continue though. I had to get that out there.
no, it's cool. It's cool, but to sort of project as to where they're going, and where they might be doing, and where and sort of how to be ahead of that, it helps a lot. But as far as like proving and making your points and really get across to people who are still kind of learning, I think it's better off to start with things that are known for a fact, in order to not muddy the waters. But for us who totally eat up this stuff and want to understand what moves may or may not be being made, go for it. But that's just my 2 cents on the subject.
All right. Well, I think that there's been a debate that you were a part of there, Richard, recently, about the use of the conspiracy theory or conspiracy fact that I watched recently, where you were defending the idea of how it is that we can continue to bring thought into the liberty mindset, and there are some people who obviously can be reached through the shock and awe of, holy crap, that's a really bad thing. I cannot believe that they're doing that, and bring them to question the idea of government as being a good thing. And I think that you'll find that the majority of the panel here probably is more from the mindset of the, well, we want to teach them the perspective that you need to have good principles to start with, and then you base things upon those principles. And we can see in our daily lives the violation of those principles through the extortion that is taxation, through the violence of the drug war, and so on. And for us, people who, I don't know, I would say if you're familiar with the atheist movement, there are a lot of people who become atheists because their church had a bunch of assholes in it. And they got pissed off and they said, screw this, I'm not going to be religious anymore. But they didn't understand the foundational point of being an atheist, which is, I don't accept that there is a God because I don't have any evidence that shows that there is a God. It's a skeptic's perspective that says, I'm going to just not buy into this bull without evidence. And so they come to that belief system in a wrong-headed way, and then they're jammed into some other thing because somebody else comes along and persuades them that, well, we're a really loving church, we're a really caring church. And so when it comes to seeing a government act in a way that is so vile as, let's say, causing the 9/11 attacks, or maybe the Pearl Harbor attacks or whatever, that we can't get them to realize the fundamental underlying principles that make it so that they won't approve of a different government that claims to be nicer and more open. And like when Obama was going in there were lots and lots of people who were really angry at Bush because of all these atrocities that Bush was doing. And he said, well, we're going to have a transparent government. We're going to have a change and hope. And that's exactly what the result is of people who fight against the atrocity thing instead of come at it.
Can I interject here?
Yep, absolutely.
Because you're assuming that you can reach people one way, that there's only one way, and if you don't do it this way, then that's wrong. There's only this one way. We have to convince people based on the principles first and economics first. You can't do it another way. Well, not everyone comes in that way. You know what? Yeah. I didn't. If I didn't see that the evils that the state had done, I might not be. I was a bit of a socialist before that, and if I didn't see that I had to see that the state had I actually had to see the concrete examples of what the state had done to kind of have my mind opened like that. You know, like I said to Objectivist Girl, wouldn't you rather these conspiracy theorists that already exist, they're already conspiracy theorists, wouldn't you rather them be libertarians and anarcho-capitalists instead of being statists?
Well, you know, obviously
Well,
we would all want them to become anarcho-capitalists, yeah.
Well, so, you know, I came in through the conspiracy way, and the thing is, there's a lot of the stuff that the conspiracy theorists say is actually that's 100% provably true. You know, you can read history books, and it's damn well it's there. You know, I don't know if if Israel or the U.S. government did 9/11, but I know there's enough of a discrepancy in their story that they're hiding something. So to prove, I don't see what is wrong with proving that the government is lying about something. Why? And this is something that kind of frustrates me greatly with libertarians and anarcho-capitalists. Is they wanted to restrict conversation to these narrow parameters of economics and principles. Well, I'm sorry, but after a while, talking about the non-aggression principle all day and talking about, excuse me, talking about economics all day, that's a very narrow spectrum. Why should we restrict ourselves to this narrow spectrum, especially when there's other people who I think that are very susceptible to our message? Why should we not go and interact with them? That's kind of why, as much as I dislike Reisenwitz, I've kind of eased up on my hatred towards her, because she's going out there and kind of mingling with people that, well, I don't like it. She might be able to bring some of them into the fold in a way, you know what I mean? So yeah. I think we need people everywhere. We need people in the feminists. We need people in the conspiracy. We need to have people everywhere. And it kind of really grates on me that when people think we should only have debate within this narrow spectrum.
Well, I'm not saying we shouldn't, obviously. Go ahead, Marky.
Yeah, but I think it's important to teach people about principles and things like that, and to get them to understand a philosophical point of view. But I definitely agree with Richard as far as talking about the narrow perspective of the non-aggressive principle all the time, and Federal Reserve printing money out of thin air. So I agree. It's definitely narrow-minded.
See, what I try and do is I try and talk about conspiracies, but I talk from a libertarian perspective. So I'm like, well, this happens because we've got a state monopoly on force. And, you know, so if we didn't have this monopoly, there'd be free markets, and and basically also point out how the government regulation, government intervention in the economy is in and of itself a conspiracy, because it gives those who are close to the state you know, what would you say? Oh, what's the word? Unfair trade advantages, right? It gives them advantages in the market that they wouldn't otherwise have. So that in and of itself is a conspiracy too, because it's giving people benefits.
You know, realistically, I think that we all would agree that any way that we can actually communicate that brings a total net increase in the number of people who can understand the philosophical principles that lead people to anarchism, or people who at least will be open to listening to those thoughts, is a good thing. You know, Kyron might do it by growing food and sharing his food with people and saying, hey, you know what, you can be a part of a free living life, you know, through agorism. That's great too, and you know, we can come at it from a philosophical thing.
I'm gonna do it through basketball. Let's just get that straight.
Oh yeah, through basketball. Sorry, you know, you know, we all came up together with these rules together, and we didn't have somebody dictate those rules to us. So take that, statist. No, we definitely have a variety of interests that are out there, and there are some people who, yes, they're going to be stuck in their particular perspectives on, you know, being conspiracy theorists, and why not go ahead and bring them on board? I'm totally with you there. Did anybody else have any more comments on this particular thing before we go into one of the other topics?
Sure. Well, I agree that there are many ways to do things, but even though I think even though I think it's important, I'm trying to say this right. I know I don't really care.
Rothschild cannot be at a loss for words. I've never experienced that before.
You actually got him to not be able to speak, but I'm sure that what he's doing is he's trying to avoid a landmine that he feels that's out there.
I'm trying to not offend people, which is weird, because usually I like offending people. What I'm trying to say is that I think one of the problems potentially with coming at it from a conspiracy theorist is that we're going to be viewed as even crazier than we are. That, oh, these people are paranoid. They're huh?
So what?
Well, you know what? If you want to have credibility in your particular movement, it's best to try to stay within credible means. And so, when, for example, if people have a distaste for feminism, which I do, then when somebody like Kathy Reasonwitz comes along and starts to interact and starts to say, well, we need to start spreading the message to feminists and bringing them on board, I'm going to react with a very response.
Isn't that a slippery slope then? Because we're trying to moderate. Because I don't care if something is off-putting to someone. I care if it's true. Is there evidence to back it up? If there's not evidence to back it up, then you're right. We shouldn't talk about it. But if there is evidence, then it shouldn't matter if it's popular or not, because we're talking about facts and reality here. If we're going to start self-censoring ourselves based on what we think will be appealing to people, that's a slippery slope that I'm not willing to slide down.
Yeah, I think that we definitely need to have the moderate people who are going to communicate, but we also need the flamboyant as well to have all of the different perspectives have an avenue to reach the thought process that we're looking for. So, have you composed your thoughts, Daniel?
No, but I'll say them anyway. Well, yeah. Look, I think it's important though to, what's the point of delivering a message if people are going to reject it, right? So. If they say if you want to cook a frog, you can't turn the fire hot all the way; they'll jump out. I think we shouldn't lie. We shouldn't not be who we are, and we shouldn't speak truth. But I think that we should deliver our message in a way that people will not reject.
Well, look at Chris Cantwell. He's more popular than any of us here, and he's the most offensive. He's the most belligerent, and he's the one who cares less about offending people and delivering the message right.
That's true.
I think to Richard's point here, we have to look at that wide net philosophy, and yeah, we're trying to get as many people to understand our point of view as possible. So the real question isn't whether we should or shouldn't on a moral basis, but whether the net gain. What's the net gain? Are we going to turn more people off as a result of conspiracy theories than we are going to bring into philosophical thinking, or are we going to attract more people than we are going to turn off? And that's maybe a question that we can't answer here, but I do know that I don't personally want to have my channel, my shows, or anything like that associated with the tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist weirdos that nobody wants to listen to. And actually, the first time I ever heard the word libertarian, it was used in that context. I didn't know that I was one at the time, but I heard it in that context first. So to each his own, and I think the more conversations out there, the better. So I agree with you, Richard, but I think that time will tell as far as the net gains or losses of that.
You're talking about net and netting, and I really love fishing. I might just do an anarchist fishing show and talk about the state as it relates to fishing and do all this research. Well, why do you need a fishing license in the first place? And,
you know what? That's not fair. You're taking my shtick. That's I'm supposed to be the Segway king, and I had a freaking Segway, and you totally ruined it. All right, so actually, here's my segue into the next topic. We talk about the idea that we're just going to put everything out there, and if we put too much out there at a time, that it may cause people to just reel back and go, "Whoa, I know you're too much." And the question then comes up: if you are, let's say, a 15, 14-year-old kid who has come to the message of liberty, and you know that you are an anarcho-capitalist, and you've got fundamental principles, you've got a basic understanding of economics, and you've gotten to the point where you're on board, what are you going to do about your parents? When you're going to try to communicate with them, are you going to stay in the closet, so to speak, or are you going to actually just vomits measles all over them. What are you going to do? How is it that you would actually approach it? So I'm going to go ahead and ask our guest here, Katy. What would you say as far as how would you approach a parent when you are so young and they are still in control of your life in so many ways?
I'd actually love to be in that position. I wish I was a decade younger. I would have so much more time and so many more years to work with. But yeah, that would be a great position. And I feel like just anytime something comes up, like kind of point out, like whenever the government can't do what they claim to be able to do, like point out the practical argument, point out the moral argument, like, okay, well, you want this and I want this. How much force are you willing to use against me? Like the whole against me argument, and kind of just like have those conversations. It depends on how close the kid is with the parent. Hopefully, they're really close, but just kind of pointing out, like, I don't know, all sorts of things and solutions and getting in those conversations. I don't know, I just kind of like a slow, like don't blast them with information, just kind of slowly introduce, like maybe leave an article open out on the computer that your neocon dad is going to go to after he, has his dessert or whatever. Like little things like that, like kind of leave a piece here, leave a piece there, say this. You just find little ways to kind of drop hints or drop information, and I think that's a good way to kind of go about it.
That's the position that I'm currently in.
That's the position you're currently in, Nico?
You're 14 years old? Wow, you hit puberty young.
No, but I was.
Yeah.
Right, we all were.
So did you communicate with your parents and say, hey, you know what, I'm an anarcho-capitalist and this is what it means? Or did you kind of, just get found out without actually talking to them ahead of time? How did it go?
I kind of shot myself in the foot a bit because I did admit it, but I didn't quite explain it to them. I just sort of told them that's what I was. And the thing about parents is, they kind of shake their heads like, well, fucking kids, right? They don't really know much. But even though they themselves might not be anarchists, I was able, because I've never been afraid of discussion or discourse, I was able to at least have one of them agree with me to the point of where he then asked me, well, okay, I see where you're coming from, I understand, and I agree with you, but how do you get from the state that we currently have to then? How do you implement? So, I mean, there's the possibility of, them disowning you. I know that happens a lot with people who come out of the closet if they're homosexuals. It certainly happened when I came out as an atheist, because I'm an atheist and my parents aren't. They really didn't appreciate that very much. But if you don't come out, then you can't have, I guess, that expansion of a relationship with your parents. And I'm not scared of coming out with my ideas. So I think the best way to do it is to talk about it with them, but don't be stoic, don't be brief, and you have to be really patient, and you have to be really humble, just like you would be with anyone else who is unfamiliar, and especially because they're your parents, and they're probably not going to think very highly of what your opinions are because you're so inexperienced within the realm of personal experience and age. So yeah, that's the position I'm currently in.
Okay, Richard, what do you think?
Well, I think that really depends on your relationship with your parents. Basically, I think it's going to be a tough sell either way, because I think most parents, at least in today's day and age, aren't wanting to be schooled by their kid. They're going to be inherently skeptical, probably more skeptical than anyone else, because this is like my kid. What are you going to teach me? You know what I mean? The kind of that ego gets in the way. So, like I said, it depends on the relationship. If you have an open and honest relationship, yeah, why not? If you don't, if you have a more standoffish, hierarchical kind of not a good relationship, I probably might say not to. But I think it all depends on circumstances and whether or not the said kid or feels comfortable talking to their parents about these things. It might be easy. It might be better, easier and better for them not to, depending on the circumstances. Again.
Yeah, Marky, what would you say?
I think it's just based on what Richard said. How comfortable the kid is talking to their parents, and how they feel at coming out as being an anarcho-capitalist or whatever it is. Basically, the circumstances.
Okay, and Rothschild?
Well, I mean, I think it depends what age. I mean, the way I would do it is say to my parents, I'm gay, and they go, what? No, I'm actually just an anarchist. And they go, phew. So that's how you have to do it. You know, but I don't know. I mean, I think I can't speak for anyone else, but I mean, at least my parents, they would just, I don't know if they would care, you know, that's like saying I'm coming out to my parents and I'm a Republican and they're Democrats. Like, yeah, you know, they'll disagree with you and they'll think you're crazy, but they're not going to be like, but I want grandchildren and I can't have grandchildren now. Well, maybe they can't because, you know, let's face it, libertarians are not very popular. Yeah, you know, I mean, look, I'm an atheist and I grew up, you know, Orthodox Jewish family, so, you know, telling your parents you're an anarchist and an atheist is not the easiest thing in the world to do, as if they weren't disappointed enough in me already.
All right, Cody?
Yeah, you know, obviously it depends on the unique situation, but being as free as we are in my household, we as a family have become somewhat of a safe haven for other kids that we know. I've had several nieces and nephews who come to live with us for a while, try to get on their feet and that kind of thing, because the situation at their house was so intolerable. And we live in a culture, largely, at least here in America, where, and I'm sure it's even more so abroad, that because I said so is a good enough reason to listen to your parents. You know, that's the parents' logic, because I said so. So the parents are indoctrinated into this hierarchical situation where they are the government in their house, and the child's simply not allowed to disagree. And so, you know, I would say to any young person who's in that situation that it may behoove you to just keep quiet. Continue to learn, continue to explore, but keep your mouth shut and keep the peace until you are out, because unfortunately our families are very state regulated right now, and unfortunately, unless you're emancipated legally or move out at the age of 18, you don't have much of a choice without a gun in your face, literally. So you know, I would say in those extreme situations where you're going to run up against that type of hostility, keep your head down, continue to do what you got to do to grow as a person, and keep your mouth shut until the day you turn 18 and can move out on your own. And the other thing I would say is the faster you can establish independence, meaning financial independence, and get out on your own, the faster you are able to be a free human being and not under the thumb of an oppressive parent. So, you know, maybe that's an extreme situation, but I know that there are a lot of kids in that situation. And I mean, I moved out when I was 15, and as did my wife. We were very young, and you do what you got to, you know. So sometimes just keeping the peace is more important than speaking your mind.
And then we're going to go to Kyron for the last word. Actually, I guess I'm going to have the last word, but Kyron, go for it.
All right. So 14 and coming out as an anarchist is kind of, you know, coming out as an atheist was, I kind of handled it nonchalantly, like, you know, you all aren't, like, what's wrong with you all? So, you know, in that scenario, exactly what Cody was saying is, you know, if you are an anarchist at 14, you realize that a lot of things about a lot of things. So it wouldn't be really too hard for you to figure out how to become someone who is independent. I mean, you know, if you got a chance, you could probably figure out how to do aquaponic systems, or even how to do, you know, simple building techniques, and you know, find out how to maybe do tiny houses or something like that. And then we became, you know, quite proficient in the technique, going out and actually doing it to get the hell out of that situation in which you can't have communications with parents who aren't willing to hear it, if that is your situation. But you know, if you're 14 and you realize that you are an anarchist, you're in a pretty good position to make some changes as far as how your parents think. But you know, for the most part, I don't think most parents are really all that smart to begin with, because anybody who's willing, and I'm gonna say this about moms in general, anybody who's willing to push a whole person out of a hole the size of a lemon probably isn't the most sane person to begin with. But that's just me.
All right, so the thing I would just say, as far as my own perspective on it, is that there's going to be some absolutists that are going to say, well, you got to defoo. And there are going to be some absolutists that are going to say, they're your parents. You've got to accept them. I think you make your own way. You accept your differences, or you don't accept your differences. It's just a personal choice. But because you are in a situation where your financial livelihood is dependent upon their success, their approval, and so on, you know, they might actually have legitimate reasons for being confrontational with this particular subject. They work in a military whatever, and they're going to lose their job because of you spouting off some, you know, anarchist-themed stuff on YouTube. Who knows? I can't say what it is, but I do know that if you do want to approach the topic and you feel that it is something that you don't have the ability to have a discussion with them where it's going to be comfortable for you, then get a friend who's actually a part of the voluntarist movement and bring them on board and sit down and have a discussion together, instead of just being there on your own trying to deal with a parent figure who's obviously got an authoritarian perspective, because that's the way that they understand families work, that what I say as a parent, you have to listen because I said so. So try to develop a situation where you can have a discussion where it's not going to be a confrontation, where it's a power struggle. Whether that means finding what it is that they agree with, that a voluntarist would agree with, if they're against the drug war because, I don't know, like, let's say that they're a hippie, great, go for that. Start talking about those things. Start talking about the ridiculous regulation effects that happen to the economy if they're a Republican, and say, you know, by restraining people from being able to create businesses, we've just shut down the job sector, you know, and actually start talking about, well, who is it that did that? Why did it happen? And, you know, discuss things that are on a amicable basis, or at least have somebody there who will be at least partly in your, you know, who will be in your corner if you're going to have a discussion of that nature. So since we've got so many people on here, I think we're going to just make this last point be just an interview question for Katy, and then if anybody has a show that they would like to you know, advertise, you know, definitely provide that. At the end of this show, we'll go ahead and be closing this one out, and then we will be I will be joining Voluntary Virtues After Hours with the Kruger. That's me. And that will follow the show. I'll get the Google Hangout and the YouTube link out as quickly as possible. Obviously, since I'm running both shows, I can't do it as quickly as I normally would. But the final question is then for Katy. Assuming that you were on your deathbed, you have lived a life that has been recognized by the populace, that you're a very popular person in the world now, and they're listening to what it is that you have to say right before you pass. What is that one key phrase that you would just want everybody to internalize and understand and say, Katy taught me something? What was it?
Oh man, that's good. In like a one-sentence format, or?
Make it as, you know, if you want to make it 3, 5, 7 sentences, that's fine, just not too long.
I don't know. I saw this really cool little magnet the other day with a porcupine. I forget who posted it, but underneath it said, "Don't start nothing, won't have nothing," with a little porcupine. So basically just all interactions and relationships, transactions should be peaceful, and the best way to make them peaceful is that they're all voluntary. You know, just the non-aggression principle. I own myself. I don't ever want to hurt or steal from others, and really just live and let live. Peace.
All right, and then go ahead and give us the places where we can see your work, where we should look, and any upcoming things that you have going on.
Sure. Well, my YouTube channel is Katy Khaos, K-A-T-Y, and then Khaos with a K. So just, I guess, youtube.com/Katy Khaos, and then my address is Katy Calculate, Calculate with a K. I'm also tweeting all the time. I love Twitter. It's like my little notepad archive. Anything interesting I find, I kind of just stick on Twitter. So it's just Katy_Khaos. And like I said before, look out for that shit patriotic Merc can say, or as Kieran said, Merkins be like. I might change it to that. So I got a couple other things in my notepad, like, you know, ideas coming up. You guys will just have to tune in and see.
Awesome. All right. Well, just for the rest of the gallery here, we have Cody Limbaugh. You have a show. What time? And on Voluntary Virtues, what time should people check that out?
I pre-record, so you can actually check it out anytime in the archives, but it is always scheduled to post at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Tuesday. It's basically a variety show called Live All Your Life.
Awesome. And Rothschild, do you have a show that you're on?
Yes. I have a show. It hasn't been pre-recording for some reason. I'll try to fix that. But it's live, 10 Eastern Standard Time. It's called Live Free, Die Old, and I'm also doing that, but a pre-recorded, but I've had some bugs with it, which is, that's Mondays at 10 Eastern Standard Time, and Tuesdays supposedly 1 Eastern Standard Time. But some.
Okay, and Kyron?
Alan said.
I have my show is on Mondays, 8:30 to 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. It's Kyron Pearson and Friends. My consistent co-host at this point is Jessica Colon. Not a lot of friends have come through as of yet, but you know, I discuss a lot of topics that are, you know, dealing mostly with people of color. I know that there's sort of a niche market there. Not that I subscribe to even being of color, but cognitive dissonance, and we in and out the matrix. Anyway, so yeah, come check it out. It's hopefully you like it, and we'll be bringing some new things that, you know, people will love.
All right, we got to rush through this really fast, so everybody just bullet point, bang, bang, bang. Marky.
I have a YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/MichaelRule12, and that's my YouTube channel.
Great. Nico, do you have a show?
Yeah, my show is called In Politics. It comes on at 11 p.m. Eastern Time.
Okay.
Also, I would like to thank Richard for changing my opinion on conspiracy theorists today. I think it does boil down to that question of would you rather than be statist or not. So that's pretty much it. It's live and pre-recorded, so it just depends.
What day, though?
Oh, it's on Fridays, 11 p.m. Eastern Time.
Okay, and Richard?
My show is Liberty Machine News on Friday on the Voluntary Virtues Network at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. My YouTube channel is youtube.com/deathmetalpatriot, and my website is libertymachinenews.com, and you can stay tuned for my upcoming documentary, Hidden Influence.
Great, and if everybody will just please subscribe to Voluntary Virtues Network on YouTube. We have a lot of shows. I have another show that I do where we basically answer questions from statists who disagree with the anarcho-capitalist position. It's called The Anarchist Experience. That airs every, let's see, 4:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sundays. And again, you've got the flagship Voluntary Virtues that I co-host every Tuesday with all of our lovely guests or whoever happens to be able to jump in. Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, thank you for joining us, and we are out.